Want to just tell you a couple stories to start out with because we're talking about the mess today. And so you may have, I can actually bring one, but on your chair or next to you is a Discovery Church pen. There's probably 25,000 of those floating around Greenville and other parts of the country. I've actually seen them when I've been in South Carolina, crazy as that is, and it wasn't with somebody that I knew. But maybe you've never done this, but I'm that guy. Where I go to just, get home from church, I pick up after all of you guys, and so I'll stick pens in my pocket. And then I'll go home and I'm like, I want to change. I want to put on shorts because it's going to be nice today. And so I'll just throw my clothes in the laundry, and then I'll do my laundry, and then I'll dry my laundry, and then I'll ruin a whole entire batch of laundry because the Discovery Church pens were in there. So you've probably never done that. I remember, and some of you have heard this story, we had Italian spaghetti, lasagna, something like that for dinner. And in the middle of the night, I'm the guy who, like, my kids aren't going to be able to get away with sneaking into my house because I wake up. And so in the middle of the night, I heard this sound, like, what is it? I'm figuring it's my kids. They're running around, playing games or something, but it's the middle of the night. How do I know? Because I'm already sleeping. And so I look, and it's like 2:30 in the morning. So I come out of my room, and I turn the corner, and there's a light on in the bathroom. And I go into the bathroom, and it looks like a murder scene. Because one of my kids who was eating with us earlier in the evening suddenly was sick with Italian food and knew that they had to throw up. So as they ran to the bathroom, they made it to the bathroom door, but they didn't make it to the bathroom toilet. And at that point, they just couldn't contain it anymore. It just went all over the wall, all over the toilet and the sink and the counter. The only thing they missed was the bathtub, and that's because it had a shower curtain protecting it. And I wanted to just close the door and say, I'll see you in the morning. But I didn't. I cleaned it up. Woke up the next morning, and my wife's like, were you up last night? I said, yes. She goes, why? So I told her. She said, I didn't even know. I said, that was the point. I love you that much. But I didn't want to. And any of you who maybe have dogs, okay? I've got 2 dogs. I've got golden retrievers. And I've got mama golden retriever and then baby golden retriever who came from mama. And the baby golden retriever's name is Missy. And Missy's an idiot. As a matter of fact, we were watching a movie the other night, and Missy, apparently Chandler came home. He'd gone to a basketball game, and he came home, and he comes upstairs, and he says, guess what I just saw? Okay, what? Because I'm watching a movie. He goes, I came home, and Missy is standing on top of the table, all 4 paws on top of the table. We had Domino's pizza. And so there were a few of those Parmesan bites, just a little ball of dough or whatever. And she's standing up there, and she's eating it, and Chandler says, Missy! And she opens her mouth, and bloop. 3 Parmesan bites fall out. One day we left, and Missy decided that she wanted what we didn't eat, and so she went to the garbage to get it, and she was so proud of herself. So proud of herself. I come home to this, and she's like, look what I did. Again, I just wanted to leave the room. Now, why am I telling you this? Okay, because what we're going to talk about over the next number of weeks is what do you do when you encounter a mess? Okay, I gave you a few of them. I messed up my clothes. A kid messed up my bathroom and my sleep. My dog messed up my food in my kitchen. What have you messed up? Okay, some of you have messed up. Maybe we're just not talking about stuff like this. Like you tried to wash your car. I had my kids one time. Actually, it wasn't even my kids. It was somebody else's kids. We were doing a car wash. And, when you have nice cars, you don't want to use the scrubby end of a Brillo pad. But they did. What do you do? What do you do when there's a mess? Because there's a couple different ways that we can respond to it. If it's our mess, if it's something that we did, what we like to tend to do is we just want to walk away. No, I'm just going to walk away. I don't even want to deal with it. Yep, I spilled that. I messed that up. I whatever. Don't talk to me about it. I'm just going to run. And if it's somebody else's mess that we enter into, we just want to go the other way. Like, yeah, that's your problem. See you later. And maybe you can think of some things that you've encountered where people have been in the middle of a mess and you're like, yeah, I don't have time for this. I don't want to hear about it. You know what it is. You know that you can maybe even offer some support in the middle of it. You don't know how, but you could. But it's just too messy, and so you don't want it. And that's our natural tendency, is to avoid the mess. But let me tell you something. If your life is a mess, whether it's your finances or your relationships, your marriage, you've got habits that you just are trying to break, and it's a mess. You can't. You keep going back to the same stupid stuff again and again. The goal of Christianity is not to avoid the mess. If that's what you think the goal of Christianity is, so that I can sit up here and say you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do that. No, you shouldn't do that. Jesus came so that you wouldn't do that. Here's your list of things don't do. If you think that's what Christianity is, I'm sorry, you have a wrong idea. Because following Jesus isn't about avoiding something. That's our natural tendency. We want to just avoid it. Following Jesus is about becoming something. And that only happens because of what he does, not what you do. And so I'm going to say that again to make sure that you understand it. Following Jesus and being a follower who lives under the kingdom rule of Jesus Christ is not about avoiding all the bad things, because that's our natural tendency. But in God's kingdom, that's not how it works. In God's kingdom, following Jesus is about becoming something, and he does it for you, which is why the title of this whole series is Lord, Bless This Mess. Because if you go to Cracker Barrel, you can probably get a cute little sign, it's like antique or something that says, bless this mess. You can hang it in your kitchen, and you put it in your laundry room or something. Oh, bless this mess, and you'll feel cutesy about it, okay? That's not Christianity, because you can clean up the mess, or you can have somebody come over to your house. My wife loves cleaning. She'd be happy to show up at your house, organize things, put them all back, and you'd feel good for a day until you messed it up again. But that's not what it's about. We can show up in the mess, but we ask the Lord to bless it. So, give you a few more just kind of starting points, and then we're going to jump in, and we're going to be, if you've got your Bible, you can turn now. We're going to be in Luke chapter 10, but I'll give you a couple more things, because it's no secret, you guys know this, any one of you probably could have picked 4 or 5 stories of your own life that you've made a mess of. Whether it's relationally, you've said something when you shouldn't have said something, you went someplace you shouldn't have been, you did something you shouldn't have done, and you think, oh, if I just wouldn't have done that, if I would have avoided it, it would have all been better. Now, that may be true, but the goal, again, isn't to avoid. There are big messes all around, okay? Nobody doubts this, right? We can just talk politics for a second, okay? I can just say, President Trump, and immediately there are people who are like, what a mess, on every side. We can talk immigration, what a mess. We can talk healthcare, what a mess. Like, there are ginormous messes. And some of us are fixers, and we want to run in and we want to solve it. And some of us are fleers, and we want to get away from it and don't deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. And some of us are just Facebookers, and we just I recognize the mess, I'm going to say something about the mess, but it doesn't really do anything about the mess, so I'm happy. So what do we do with the big messes? One thing that you can do is we can learn from Jesus, and we don't have to be afraid of the mess. So here's one way to help. If you look at Jesus' life, Jesus, as he's walking around, it's one mess after another that he encounters, and none of them are his. It's not like, Jesus made the mess. He didn't make the bad decision. He didn't do the bad thing. Jesus just shows up when somebody else has done all this. And what did he do? Here's what he did. And this is what we're going to challenge you to do over the next however many numbers of weeks. Move toward a mess, but not every mess. Move towards a mess, but not every mess. So, the night that my child barfed all over my bathroom, they were upset. And there was a mess. There was a mess in my bathroom, and there was a mess of a kid. And you couldn't take care of both of them at the same time. And throw in that a dog who wants to eat the leftovers. Welcome to my life. Okay, what do? Okay, you just deal with a mess, not every mess. If we're going to talk about immigration, You're not going to solve the immigration problem by just trying to attack the immigration problem. You're going to have to deal with a mess, not every mess. So I'll put it in one more form for you here. When it's overwhelming because there's so much, and I'll just stick with immigration. I'm just grabbing an idea, okay? Should we allow people who have come here and it wasn't their fault because their parents brought them here, but they're not here legally? Should we send them back? Should we make them go through a process? What do we do? Do we split up families? How's that going to work? And some of you are very strong. You're like, well, you got to follow the law. And so, get the heck out of here and get in line. And that may be legitimate. And some of you are like, you can't break up families. We've got to take care of these people and these individuals. Like, they're here. They're contributing to our society. And you may be right, too. But it's a mess. And you can't solve that whole mess unless you just deal with a mess. And so, I don't have this in your notes, but you might want to write this down because some of us don't understand it. You've got problems in your family, you've got problems with your friends, you've got problems at work or anything like this, and you think, I just need to fix whatever's wrong. But here's a tip. It is absolutely 100% impossible to actually deal with the messes if you're trying to deal with the masses. And I want you to think about that, run it through your grid, and if I'm wrong, write it on your connection card. I won't turn it over, but just say, you're wrong, here's why, and give me an example. But I think it is 100% absolutely impossible to deal with and fix the messes if you're constantly only dealing with the masses. You have to deal with a mess, not every mess. And so here, I'll just put it another way for you, okay? Do for one what you wish you could do for all. So you may be driving down the road and you see a homeless person. And it starts you thinking about, man, how are people homeless? Why is that? And there's so much that's happened to them. I really want to help the homeless population. And that's a great thing, but you're not going to be able to help the homeless population unless you do for one, that guy that you just passed, what you wish you could do for all of them. And this is what Jesus did, constantly and consistently. He shows up and he does for one what he wished he could do for all. Because if you'll look, you'll notice that Jesus does not heal everybody. Jesus does not do for everybody what he does for somebody. And that's okay. He shows up and there's people scattered around this pool thinking that if they get in it, they'll be healed. And he walks up to one guy there and he says, hey, do you want to be healed? And the guy's like, I can't make my way into the pool. And Jesus is like, yeah, but do you want to be healed? And he heals them. What about all the rest of them? Well, Jesus did for one what he could have done for all. You do for one what you wish you could do for all. So how do you decide which one? Okay, this is a good question because you've got these friends and those friends, this family member, that family member, these people at work, those people at work. How do you decide which one is worthy of your help? That's a really good question, but it's also the question a lot of us use as the excuse. And that's what we're going to see in this story here in Luke chapter 10. So if you'll turn, Luke chapter 10, we're going to start in verse 25. And this is the story of let's just read it, okay? Luke chapter 10, verse 25. And behold, a lawyer, okay, so a smart guy, stood up and he put him, talking about Jesus, he put Jesus to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says to him, well, what is written in the law? How do you read it? So this lawyer answers, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your strength and all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says to him, you've answered correctly. Do this, and you'll live. So let me paint the stage for you. Smart guy shows up, talks to Jesus, and he's like, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says, well, what do you think? How do you read the law or the rules or the way that it works in God's kingdom? How do you read it? And he says, well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says, you got it, buddy. Do it and you'll live. That should be good enough, right? But no, because what we want to do is we want to try and figure out, okay, well, do I really have to do that? So verse 29, but he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? If you got a Bible, you might want to underline that because this is kind of our life philosophy, desiring to justify yourself. You just want to stand before God and say, yeah, but what about? Are you sure that's what you mean? So desiring to justify himself, he said to Jesus, and who's my neighbor? Verse 30, Jesus replied, basically, let me tell you a story. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, so this is a good little trip. It's a dangerous trip. And he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was walking down the road. Now, you need to understand, a priest, he's kind of like the pastor of the church. He'd be like me, okay, or Kevin. It'd be like, the head dude of the church, okay? So a priest, who should know better? A priest comes upon this. And he's going down the road, and he saw him, and what did he do? He passed by on the other side, because that's our natural tendency, is to avoid the mess. So likewise, a Levite. Now, what's a Levite? A Levite is just like a church worker, okay? So pick any of these band people. They should know better too. And so they come upon the mess. And they passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, which just so you know, we'll revisit this in a second, a Samaritan is like one of the Jews don't like them, Gentiles don't like them, nobody likes them. They're kind of like that mixed breed of people that nobody likes. And a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to this guy who's half dead, beat up and stolen, and he bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, set him on his own animal, and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii, and he gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever money you spend, or whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back." Which of these 3, do you think, proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? So Jesus just throws it back. He goes, you want to know who the neighbor is? You tell me who the neighbor is. And this guy can't even bring himself to say the Samaritan, because that's how bad they are. If it was the Levite, he'd say the Levite or the priest. But he can't even say the Samaritan. He said, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus says the same thing he said before. Go and do likewise. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. You go and do this and you'll live. Well, who's my neighbor? Let me tell you a story. Do you understand who the neighbor is now? Yeah? Okay. Go and do that. That's what he said. But there are all kinds of obstacles that stand in our way of acting like Jesus. We want to justify ourselves. We want to get out of it. We want to avoid the mess. So, what are some of these obstacles? I'm going to give you 3. Okay? 3 obstacles that we need to overcome, okay? This means pass through them, get past them, not avoid them, okay? It's impossible if you're going to live like Jesus to avoid these things if you're going to live like Jesus. It's totally possible to avoid these things if you just want to live for yourself, okay? If you want to live selfishly. But if you want to live like Jesus, you're going to have to overcome these things. So the priest walks by. He should know better. The Levite walks by. He should know better. But they don't. They avoid the mess. Why? We don't know. It doesn't say. I'm going to give you just a couple. I'm assuming these things are true. Priests have a lot of duties. Levites have a lot of duties. They have things that they're responsible to do. And all of us are busy. But one of the obstacles we need to avoid is the obstacle of trying to determine whether or not we're going to get involved in a mess based on convenience. Most of us want to avoid inconvenience. We don't want to be troubled. And so in this busyness, we're like, I've got so much to do. Let me just tell you something, okay? And I'm not trying to step on your toes, but it's probably going to. You are just too busy if you see a mess as an inconvenience, every mess, as an inconvenience rather than an opportunity. You're just too busy. And it's not supposed to be that way. And we're going to talk about this in one of the weeks when we talk about how do you deal with managing your time and if you're too busy. But messes are never convenient. I never put on my schedule, I didn't have an alarm go off, and I did not wake up to my phone saying, you should go clean the bathroom of Barf right now, make sure the dog doesn't eat it and the kid's okay. Just wasn't a scheduled item on my to-do list. Just like we have not trained our dog, well maybe we have, to climb on the table and to eat garbage. Not how it works. Inconvenient things. When you're trying to figure something out and you need to be someplace and a mess presents itself, convenience is an obstacle that you're going to have to overcome. What's another one? Another one is this. Comfort. Now, if you're on a road, and it's a dangerous road at that, and you see somebody who's already been beat up, stripped naked, and left half dead, You may have done exactly what the priests and Levites did. You're like, man, dude, I don't want to die. I don't want to get, maybe these guys are still here. I don't want to do that. This is completely uncomfortable. Maybe instead of just walking on the other side, they ran by on the other side. And it makes sense because that's our natural tendency. We want to avoid discomfort, and I get it. But let me just point something out, okay? And this isn't from the text. This is just something I've observed. If we insist on comfort, boredom is inevitable. Now, you may not believe me, but any of you who are parents and you have children who get out of school in the summertime, it takes about 2 days before they have nothing to do. And what do they say? I'm bored. Why is that? Because they have absolutely no responsibilities. Because they're comfortable. Because they can get up when they want. Because they can eat what they want. Because they can watch what they want. Whatever it is that they want, they can do it. And they have everything open to them. He's like, look, sleep in, play games, read books. They've got all this stuff that you may have given them as parents. Like, I built you a playhouse. I've given you toys. We'll go. And I'm bored. What is there to do? Mom, entertain me. Dave, be nice to her. I see you looking at her. But the reason this happens is because it's not comfortable to explore. And sometimes that's where we discover these messes. Now, I'm gonna be real for a second. You guys are here, so this doesn't apply to you. But I've been doing this long enough to know that there are people who have been in churches, and they've been in churches so long that they've gotten comfortable because they've figured out the rhythm. If I show up on Sunday morning, I show up at, like 10 o'clock, or I might come a little bit early, or maybe I come late, whatever their deal is, that's their thing. And then they go home afterwards, and they maybe eat at the same place or do the same thing on Sunday afternoon. Maybe they're involved in something during the week, and so they might go to a missional community or a Bible study, but this is just their pattern. Sunday I'm here, Wednesday I'm there, Sunday I'm here, Wednesday I'm there. And that's just what they do, and they're bored. The Christian life is not designed to be like that. It's supposed to be more of an adventure. And so when they're bored because they're comfortable, and what do? Typically, when that happens, people who are bored, they're uncomfortable getting unbored. And so when somebody challenges them to do something new, hey, I heard you singing when we were standing here. You should maybe go sing on stage. No, I don't want to do that. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It'd be a mess. I'd make a mess. Maybe somebody's asked them to do something, live maybe differently or something like this, but they don't like that and they want to avoid the discomfort, and so what do? They leave. Maybe some of you, the church that you were at before you came here, it didn't happen because you were upset at anybody, but because you were so comfortable where you were that you realized, I just don't like it. Something's got to change. Something's not right. But again, you can't fix everything. You can never fix the messes if you deal with the masses. And so you have to do for one what you wish you could do for all. You see how this all kind of works together? And so people who are too comfortable are usually the ones who leave churches because they don't like being pushed into discomfort and they're not willing to enter the mess. So don't let that be you, okay? I mean, you're here, good job, and we'd love to have you keep coming back, but I'm going to push you. And in the next few weeks, we're going to talk about the messes that maybe you're in the middle of, or maybe you recognize, and I'm going to push you to actually go into it so that you can do for one what you wish you could do for all. Those are some of the obstacles you're going to have to overcome. It is not convenient, it is not comfortable, and the last thing that we can talk about here is most people have a difficult time overcoming this. They want control. Well, if I was in charge, if I could do it, if it was up to me, or more than that, they want control of outcomes. And so, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. What if I get it wrong? Look, those are fair questions. You're not going to like the answer, though, because here's the deal. We want to avoid chaos. Nobody likes that. Some of you hate children, not because you hate children, but because you can't control them. They just do stuff. Okay, now I got over that a long time ago when I had kids, and they just pretty much, if you want to know what's going on in my house, just talk to one of my kids, and they'd say, my dad did this. One of their favorite stories to tell is how I say it was a spoon, they say it was a fork, but I chucked a fork at one of my kids. They were over there on the other side of the table, and I'd had enough. Boom! Now, they didn't get hurt or anything like this, but it's a family story now, and nobody gets to hide it. Why? Well, I lost control, but that's okay. I entered the mess, it turned into a good conversation. But if you come over, Tanner, my son who's at UNC now, the first thing he would ever say, any of you who came to my house, you probably experienced this. We're sitting down at dinner, we're having a meal together, and he'll look at you, and he just knows, Tanner, you're on. He says, what's the worst thing you ever did? Because he's got 25 of his own stories. And so if you don't have one, he'll just tell one. But he just wants to know what's the worst thing that you ever did. But some of you don't like that because it's just, this makes me really uncomfortable. Okay. But you don't have control. So, let me go back to my barfed-in bathroom. Okay? I don't know if you've ever had to clean up anything like this. Let's not go there. That's really just too messy. Okay? Let's do this. Let's deal, you're hanging with some little children and you're feeding them. Okay? And have you ever fed a little baby? Like I'm the guy, you videotape me because when I'm feeding a little baby, I'm like, I can't control it. It's just like a natural reaction. I think I'm eating. And anyway, but you put food in their mouth and what do? Right? It depends on what it is. But, give me some like carrots or something like that. And so little babies, it's like all over their face. And you take the spoon and you try and maybe scrape it off and keep it clean. But what happens if they just like blow chow? Okay, they ever done that? Yeah. And so you've got a napkin. But let's say you're already at the table and you need to clean it up and you've already used this napkin like 15 times. There's no clean spot on the napkin. What do? Do you just let the kid sit there all like carrot-faced? Some of you do. Anna does. Don't let her babysit. Some of you do. But no, you're like, no, this is a mess. We need to clean it up. And even though I don't have the right tools to make it completely clean, I'm going to do what I can with it. And it might make it a little bit messier, but it'll at least make it a little bit better. Or if you've ever been swimming and you didn't bring enough towels, and somebody's like, can I borrow your towel? Like, it's soaked. And it is. It's like a 12-pound towel now because everybody else has used it. What do? Nah, I can't give it to you. I can't help you. You're wet. You're going to be wet. That's just the way it is. No. It may not completely clean the mess, but you're going to give them something. You can't control what you've got. So, here's your tip for you. When it comes to the messes that we're going to talk about over the next few weeks, or the messes that you're in, or the things that you've noticed around you that are messes, we need to understand that messes are not problems to be solved. People are not projects to be completed. People are just people to be loved in the middle of a mess. And so, when I see somebody, we were praying earlier this morning, and one of the people we were praying with brought up, let's pray for the marriages around here, because I know, and this person knew, a number of marriages that are in a bad spot. Some of them over silly things, and some of them over just, it's a mess. And so we were praying for you, if that's you, just so you know, we were literally praying for you this morning. But if somebody were to come alongside you, even if you were to recognize that the person sitting next to you is going through a marital problem, we need to understand messes are not problems that we need to solve. You don't enter it in order to say, hey, here's what you do, it'll fix everything. And people are not projects to be completed. You don't enter it to say, hey, I'm going to help this guy figure out how to be a better husband, or that wife figure out how to just not be like she is. That's not it. Messes aren't a problem to be solved. People aren't a project to be completed. People are just people who need to be loved in the middle of a mess. That's it. And you don't get to control what that looks like. So here's a wrong idea. The wrong idea, you don't have control and you're worried about the outcome. You're afraid that you're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to do the wrong thing. You see somebody having problems in their finances. You hear a conversation they have about trying to pay off their bills, and they're also debating how they can purchase more stuff so that they can owe more money. And you hear it and you're like, man, that's a mess. How are they? They're not going to survive. And you're like, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't belong there. Now, there's an element of discernment. But what you don't want to do is be like the priest and Levite who has so much knowledge and just is afraid to enter into it. Be more like the Samaritan. Here's wrong thinking. Wrong thinking says, I have to do it the right way or not at all. I have to say the right thing or say nothing. I have to handle this in the appropriate manner or not handle it at all. Now, there's some truth to that, but when we're talking about dealing with messy situations, here's what the right way is. It's not I have to do everything right or not at all. It's moving towards the mess is the right way. That should free some of you up. You're sitting here trying to figure out, oh, I've got this friend, and they've got things going on in their life, and I really want to say something, but I'm afraid if I say it, it'll be taken the wrong way, and I'll upset them. And so I'm just not going to say anything. Guess what? You're wrong. Jesus wouldn't just sit on the sidelines and not say anything. And there were plenty of people that Jesus entered into relationship with, conversation with, and he said something to them, and they did not like what he had to say, and they went the other way. Is that on Jesus? Would you really sit there, if this is the life that you think needs to be lived, where you need to get it right before you do anything, would you really say the same thing to Jesus? Jesus, you shouldn't have said that. That was totally inappropriate, Jesus. Good luck if that's what you want to take. I'm thinking, though, I wouldn't try that. I just say, okay, I guess it didn't turn out right, but it's not about outcomes as much as it's just about obedience, and we don't get to decide our comfort. We don't get to decide and control everything. We don't get to decide when it's convenient. That's just what we have to do. And so we say, Lord, bless this mess, because all we have to do, all we're responsible for is to enter into it, and then Jesus works through us. He might work in us. He might work in spite of us. But you'll get to witness some amazing things. And this all goes back to what we're talking about with this 25,000. Some of you don't know what this is. Like, what's up with 25,000? Here's what's up with it. We're spending this entire year, we're trying to help people recognize what God is doing in their life or through their life. And so as we walk through our day, we interact with people, and we notice what God might be doing. And we don't know for sure how it's going to turn out, but if you're willing to enter into it and join God in what he might be doing, we count that as a win. And so you might notice that there's somebody as you're checking out. It's happened to me. You're checking out, and the person that you're checking out with at whatever store, grocery store, whatever, they're just they're not looking at you. They're having a bad day. And so you notice that. What do? If you're like a lot of people, you're trying to avoid the mess because you really don't want to know what's going on with their life, and you're trying to get your stuff, and you have to go someplace. It's inconvenient, and all those things we've just talked about, so you don't say anything. But if you're going to be like Jesus, you might notice that, and you might say, you doing okay? And they'll probably say, yeah, I'm fine, because they don't want to talk to you. And then you have a choice. Is the Lord really leading you to say, no, are you really doing okay? Like, you look like you're having a rough day. Is there anything I can do for you? Can I pray for you? What's your favorite candy bar? Can I buy that for you? You're like, do something. Now, this is between you and the Lord, and if the Lord is saying do something, then do it. And we count that as a win, and every time we have one of those, we put a marble in here. And by the end of the year, we should see 25,000 marbles that recognize, or that demonstrate we've recognized 25,000 times that God has used us, worked in us, or through us. So, when you look at this story about Jesus that he's telling, and somebody's just trying to figure out, hey, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life? That's a great question. You might not feel like you're capable or anything like that. You think, who am I to give marriage advice when my marriage is here? Who am I to give financial support when my finances are out of luck? Who am I to encourage somebody in their relationships when mine are a mess? If that's where you're at, that's okay, because it's the same thing the Samaritan could have said. Is there's a guy on the side of the road, the most qualified person to step in and help and offer some kind of support would have been the priest. I mean, he has a direct relationship with Jesus, but with God, and he didn't even care about fulfilling what this guy already knew. Love your neighbor as yourself. Next in line would have been one of these Levites. I mean, dude, you work in church. You should understand people. You should love on them. You should take care of them. We should watch out for the least of these, but he didn't. The most unqualified person would have been the Samaritan, the one that everybody hates. The guy that he was even helping probably didn't like him. But he was so passed out and almost dead, he didn't care. The people listening to the story Jesus is telling didn't like him. So, just so you know, in this story, the absolute biggest mess was the Samaritan. And the Samaritan is the one who loved the biggest. So, all that to tell you this. You don't have an excuse for not getting involved, because God uses messy people to love messy people. Oh, I don't know how to do this or that yet. I haven't figured this out for myself yet. I couldn't ever say anything to them. I don't want to be, the judge not lest you be judged. That's always taken out of context, and I don't want that thrown in my face. Well, guess what? It's okay. You're a mess. I'm a mess. We're all a mess. Jesus came to take care of our mess. He entered into our mess. He set an example for us and said, hey, look, you're a mess. We got to fix this. That's what he did. So, just so you know, before we finish up here, you cannot offer what you have not received. In other words, I could offer you $20 right now, but I could also go in my wallet and say, sorry, I don't have $20. And then you would be disappointed. And you would be misled. And you would maybe consider me a hypocrite for saying I had $20 when I don't actually have $20. When it comes to living like Jesus, you can't offer Jesus unless you've actually received Jesus. And so to receive Jesus isn't just to say a prayer and, hey, now I've got my bases covered and I'm going to heaven. That ain't it. Jesus came and he moved toward this mess of your life so that you don't have to be stuck in the mess for the rest of your life. But that doesn't mean that everything is all of a sudden better, that you get a get out of jail free card, that, we now, okay, yeah, I'm going to heaven and we don't have to worry about life now. That's not what it is. You receive Jesus by saying, hey, look, Jesus, whatever it is that you're going to do, I'm on board with because it's your kingdom, you figure it out, I'll follow. That's what it looks like to follow Jesus. And so you read stories like this and you ask the same question the lawyer did, who's my neighbor? And he's going to tell you the same story, and the people that you are least likely to like, that are in the middle of a mess, he's basically saying you need to love them. Why? Because Jesus loved you. Then you offer Jesus. So here's the question for you. Will you, over the next few weeks, will you make a commitment to live by kingdom principles and live like Jesus and not avoid the mess? Not sit back and try and figure out if you can say things right, if you do things right, or how it's going to turn out, but just whether or not you're going to show up. Will you start to live in such a way that you move towards the messes so that once you're there, the Lord can bless this mess? Now, we have some values here at Discovery. And it was interesting. I wanted to kind of highlight some of these, what our values are. And there's actually 8 of these things, and we've got 8 values, and they line up pretty darn good. So we're probably going to revisit these values over the next number of weeks. And I just want to remind you, this is what we think it looks like to live in the kingdom and as part of a kingdom family. So like next week when we talk about finances, okay, and my finger's too fat, I'm not going to be able to write all these words, but one of our values is impact and invest, okay? And so we're going to talk about our money and how we handle it, but are you actually making an impact with your finances? Are you investing in things that are eternal? This is one of our values. Another one of our values, we talk about time. And completely, but I can see where it connects. Because what we have to decide is, we think we're so busy, okay, but one of our values is to serve and lead. And so you, as a follower of Jesus, you should be serving somebody, just like the Samaritan served. You should be leading somebody. If you can't call yourself a disciple of Jesus if you are not discipling somebody else. I mean, you can, but you're just wrong. And so, how do you structure your life and your time to line up with what it looks like to live under kingdom principles? Jesus didn't seem to ever run out of time. He was the most relaxed, chill dude ever. He's just wandering here. Oh, okay, yeah, let's take care of this. And then somebody's coming and he's like, okay, yeah, we'll take care of that. And I mean, he figured it out. How? We're going to talk about that because maybe your schedule's all out of whack. One of the other things that we can talk about is we talk about health. And one of our values is restoring and healing. I guess I can't write H's. Ran out of screen real estate. Anyway, restoring and healing was what that is. Okay? And we'll go over it later. But at the end of the day, when people are broken and they're messy, Jesus comes to bless the mess and restore what was broken. Like the first song that they sang. When you see broken beyond repair, I see healing beyond belief. When you see too far gone, I see one step away from home. When you see nothing but damaged goods, I see something good in the making. It's not finished yet. When you see wounded, I see mended. Like that's what he's talking about. This is restoring and healing. This is what it looks like to live under the kingdom. You can look at it however you want, but kingdom eyes are going to see that restoring and healing is possible. You look down here, you see parenting. Obviously, this is a struggle. What happens there? Parents, if you've got little kids, that's great. You got older kids, that's great. You got kids that are gone, that's great. But all along the way, one of our values is growth and change. There's going to be a lot of it. Okay, I remember when I held Anna when she was born. Anna is much bigger now. Okay, I could not hold Anna in one arm. I have a picture of holding you in one arm. It's one of my favorites, kind of fun. Okay, I've known Dave for a long time too. He's changed too. He's grown too. Exactly, and he's much more mature. He's kind. I mean, Dave's character has been shaped now by Jesus, and he looks much more like him. Huh? I cannot hold Dave with one arm. I can't even hold Dave back with one arm. I will. Friendships are hard. Relationships are hard, and one of our values is me and we. This just looks like a mess, but it's fun for me to write. Me and we. Okay? So what are you going to do when I'm not okay, or you're not okay, or we're not okay? You're going to have to enter into that mess, and it's not easy. It's not fun. It's uncomfortable. It's inconvenient. You don't have any control, but that's okay, because you're just entering into it because that's the right thing to do, and then the Lord can bless that mess. So we're going to be talking about relationships. We're going to be talking about our desire to be approved and for people to say, hey, good job. Good job. But sometimes we don't hear good job. We hear, oh, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. You got to improve this, you got to improve that. Well, guess what? That's okay to say that too, because one of our values is teachable and accountable. We need to be teachable. You need to be able to hear that, hey, and look, all these medical people here, like they know this. They get this like every day. They get dressed down and told, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right, okay? And sometimes they handle it well, and sometimes they just forget about it. You don't want to listen to it anymore, I'm going to do it my own way. That's just what they thought. And you guys learn how to have thick skin, and good job. But you got to be teachable, and you're going to have to be accountable to some things, and this is what it looks like to live under the kingdom. Just a couple more. We talk about this. One of our values is covenant and marriage, because God loved us and He set a covenant with us that He's never going to leave us or forsake us, and it's an agreement that even if we decide we want to void, He ain't voiding it. It's permanent. And that's what marriage is supposed to be like. You say, I do, that means I do. It doesn't mean I don't anymore. And some of you are in those spots, and it's hard, and it might not be your fault. It might not be because of anything that you did. Somebody left on you, they abandoned you or anything like that. That's not what life in the kingdom is supposed to look like, and that's what Jesus came to make your mess a message for somebody else. And then the last one here, you look at all those thoughts in that guy's head, and a lot of times we have a really hard time figuring out what's true and what's not. We have people tell us things, and we doubt ourselves, and so one of our values is grace and truth. And so you look at this, and we're going to talk about all these things over the next however many weeks. At the end of the day, there are a ton of messes that we could deal with. I don't know what yours is, but I'm begging you, will you be willing to walk like Jesus did towards a mess? Not every mess, okay? I'm not looking to you to figure out what everybody's issue is. That's not your calling. But whatever's in front of you isn't an interruption, it's an opportunity. And if you have that opportunity, will you walk towards it instead of away from it? Will you enter into it instead of avoid it? This is what we're trying to do. So, let me pray for you guys. Let me pray for the messes that we're going to encounter. And then I got one more thing for you. Father, I thank you for that. You were willing to do exactly what we're talking about. We can learn from you. And we can learn from others who have already entered into the messes of life. They dealt with conflict. They dealt with marriage. They dealt with finances. They dealt with all kinds of character issues. And God, I pray that you would help us to live that way. And those who don't know what this looks like, Father, if we need help, I pray that every person here would have already recognized that Jesus entered into the mess for us. And it's simply a matter of us saying, Jesus, thank you. I submit myself to your will and to your way. I'm going to figure out what it looks like to live in the mess because I'm going to live like you. And so, Father, help us to say yes to that. so that you can turn our messes into a message. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.